I first got into Fujifilm with the Fujifilm X-T3 and I thought, wow, what a great company. They kept putting out new cameras but kept updating the X-T3, even cannibalizing the X-T4 because the X-T3 basically had everything the X-T4 had. Generally, the X-T3 got all the updates that the X-T4 got. It was great. I really fell in love with Fujifilm with the X-T3, but I think the company has lost the plot a little bit with the new cameras, the new firmwares, and what they have been putting out. They have been chasing money so much and putting out stupid cameras that aren't really needed in the market, giving us dumb features like a specified dial for film simulations. I don't know anyone who switches film simulations that much that they need a dial for it, and generally putting out so many cameras without fixing the issues that they gave us with the firmware for the Fujifilm X-H2S, X-T5, XS20. There are so many videos on how they ruin the autofocus, how much that firmware is worse than firmware 1.03, which came out basically a month after the camera came out. So yeah, Fujifilm is kind of losing it and just pushing AI and stupid stuff in their firmware just to make us think it's great, it's new, they're working better, but everything is just worse, which doesn't really make sense. Also, they're putting out a cinema camera with a medium format 100 megapixel sensor, which doesn't really make sense to me because the readout of that sensor is not that great. As far as I know, the sensor is huge, it has a lot of megapixels. I don't know, maybe it can do 16K or whatever, but who needs that many Ks? I don't know. Yeah, they should have just put out the cinema camera with the Fujifilm X-H2S sensor because the sensor is great. They do have some great technology within the cameras, but I don't know, they're just kind of making the cameras worse with bad firmware and bad practices in the company, which is definitely not great. I think at this point I can completely say that Fujifilm is not a camera brand for people who work with their cameras. I do work with my camera, lately not so much because I'm in the process of moving, but generally I do weddings, events, I do photo and video, and Fujifilm is just not reliable enough to work with their cameras. I have the Fujifilm X-H2S, it's the flagship camera, and it has way too many issues. It freezes way too much. It just doesn't work well enough for a flagship camera. For the price, I can buy a mid-range mirrorless camera that will work much better from any of the competing companies. Sony, Canon, or Nikon, you can buy a great camera and be much better off than buying a Fujifilm X-H2S and just having to put up with all the issues, having to maybe update the firmware, hoping it will fix all the issues that the camera has, and then fixing nothing. I don't know. I haven't even updated to firmware 7.10. If you watched my channel previously, you know I downgraded from 7.00 to 1.03, and I made 2 videos about it. And yeah, that really helped with giving usability back to the camera, but I didn't really want to update to 7.10 because I thought it will probably not be as good, or it will be the same as 1.03, which recently Edward, the Fujifilm autofocus guy, we all wait for his videos whenever new firmware is out just to make sure if it's good or not. Thank you, Edward, for doing that. Anyways, he showed us that firmware 7.10 is not as good as the old firmware, so for now I'm sticking with 1.03. At some point soon I will be selling this camera and all of my, well, not all of my Fujifilm gear, because I will be keeping my Fujifilm X-T3 because I like this thing too much, and also it's way too beat up to sell. So I'm gonna be keeping that and the 23mm f1.4, but everything else will be sold, and I will go either with a Sony, when the Sony a7 IV comes out, or with a Nikon Z6 III. So yeah, I think at this point I wouldn't recommend anyone going into the Fujifilm system, because buying into a system means that you're gonna buy into lenses, buy into all the gear that supports your camera and then have nowhere to grow with it, because it doesn't make sense. Even if you start with maybe an XS20 or maybe even lower, you can grow to a XH2S, which again is not reliable enough for serious work. You can do it, it's possible. You need to have a backup camera. A good tip is to always have a backup camera, but if you're using Fujifilm, it's even more important than ever. And I just don't like how many issues I've had with the XH2S. So yeah, if you're into Fujifilm as well and want to be serious about cameras, want to work doing either photo or video, maybe Fujifilm is not for you. The XH2S is great. The image quality is amazing, especially for video. I love the colors. I love the f-log. It has so many strong things going for it, but it also has so many stupid issues like freezing, like the autofocus. I don't know, it's such a mess that it just doesn't make sense. On paper, this camera was perfect for me, but in real life, I'm just getting too many issues with it, so yeah. Anyways, that's gonna be it for this video. I just wanted to talk about Fujifilm and to talk about my thoughts about what the company is doing, and I just don't like it. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.